Hi everyone, what's up? We're back here with another episode of the Asian Football Show. I'm joined by my wonderful friend Erfan here for episode 8 on Asian football. Erfan, how are you doing, my friend?
Yeah, hey Arya. I'm very happy to be back again. Always nice to cover some Asian football. And we had a fair bit going on this month, didn't we, Arya?
Yep, so we're gonna go through the FIFA World Cup qualifiers, the round one. We're gonna go with international friendlies. We're gonna also talk about the Asian Champions League match day 2 and 3, as well as the AFC Cup match day 2 and 3. We're also going to be mentioning the Women's Olympic qualifying tournament that happened a few days ago. And last but not least, we're going to be talking a little bit about a very particular tournament, the Under 14 CAFA Nations Cup, I believe it's what it's called. And we're just going to talk a little bit about that as well. So, have fun. Without further ado, let's get started.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll go through the results for the World Cup qualifiers first, which will also be acting as qualifiers for the Asian Cup, so it's joint qualification. So the first time, Afghanistan beat Mongolia 1-0 across both legs, so 1-0 and 1-0. It was 2-0 on aggregate. Maldives lost to lower ranked Bangladesh on aggregate. The first leg ended 1-1 in Maldives, and Bangladesh won 2-1 in Dhaka. Singapore survived little scare by Guam, actually, only winning 2-1 in Singapore, but then they were 1-0 in Guam to advance to the next round. Yemen won 3-0 in Saudi Arabia against Sri Lanka. Drew 1-1 in Sri Lanka, but that was still enough for Yemen to progress. Myanmar won against Macau 5-1 in Yangon. Then drew the game return leg in Macau 0-0. Macau progressed to the next round. And then the biggest surprise of this round is Pakistan. They were ranked the lowest Asian nation, but they came up on top against Cambodia, drawing the first game 0-0 and Phnom Penh. But then in the return leg in Islamabad, which we saw a very good crowd, I'd say actually. They were able to win the game 1-0 and progress to the second round, which is historic for them. Chinese Taipei smashed Timor Leste 4-0 and 3-0, and Indonesia repeated their 6-0 win at home, also away in Brunei. They won 12-0 on aggregate. Hong Kong beat Bhutan 4-2, even though they lost the return leg in Bhutan 2-0. It was a little too late for Bhutan. And Nepal beat Laos 2-1 to progress to the second round as well. So, Arya, what are your first thoughts on this? What are your overall thoughts?
I think it was a brilliant round of qualifying games. Obviously, I think the focus here is going to be on Pakistan beating Cambodia 1-0. It was all over my Twitter feed, and it's a very huge thing for Asian football. A lot of people are going to overlook this, because when we talk about Asian football, the main suspects are always Japan, Korea, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and such. Never really these lower ranked teams. I think this is huge. It really does show that there is something out there. There is, this type of football is being developed well. It's cool to see Pakistan, finally qualifying for the next round. And I believe they were the only Asian nation to have never made it. I could be wrong, but that's what I read. I did not notice prior. But if it is true, then like I said, it's historical. And I've seen a lot of dual nationals playing in the lower leagues in England being called up for Pakistan, notably Otis Khan, if you know who that is, Irfan. So it's cool to
Yeah,
see.
he actually faced problems, so he couldn't play the games against Cambodia, but I heard that he is going to be cleared for the games in November, so hopefully he's okay for that.
So they are getting better players, a stronger squad. It's always cool to see, and you never know. Pakistan can definitely. I mean, I wouldn't say they're going to become a Asian football powerhouse necessarily, but it's cool to see. Maybe they're going to get out of the misery they've been for the past. Well, I mean, for a very long time. So it's very cool to see. I'm very happy for them as well.
Yeah, and their goal was scored by Harun Hamid, who actually spent around a decade in the Queen's Park Rangers academy system. So he's a familiar face for QPR. He's only 19 years old as well, so maybe he could be a big player for them in the future. And another thing I would like to mention is Afghanistan versus Mongolia. So something interesting happened. So obviously Afghanistan, they're not able to play at home. So they play their games in Dushanbe, Tajikistan, as it's close to their own country and there's a good Afghan population there. But they won their first game 1-0, but in the return game in what's it called, in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia. So their head coach, he was going to get fired, okay, and he was trying to sabotage the team because the players protested against him. He was trying to sabotage the team, and he didn't agree to sign the kickoff list hours before the game. And if he did not sign that list, I think his name is Al Mutairi. Uh, Afghanistan would have forfeited the game 3-0, and they would have been eliminated, and it would have been really, really sad. But thankfully, the problem got sorted. He got sacked. There's news of a new English manager called Westwood, I believe, coming into Afghanistan. He has some experience in Asian football before. He managed some Indian teams, I think. And yeah, in the return leg, Farshad Noor, the captain, he finished the game off for Afghanistan. And another thing is that there's been rumors of even more corruption in the Afghan Football Federation. So the Saudi FA paid around $130,000, I believe it was, to the Football Federation of Afghanistan to distribute it amongst the staff and high members of the federation for them to play their home games in Saudi. Now that's not good for Afghanistan because Afghanistan are going to be playing some games against Gulf nations, so it's going to be a disadvantage for them if they play their home games in a country like Saudi. So this has caused some protests, and apparently the federation's president has been arrested by the Taliban. So, yeah, it's very sad to see corruption like this going on at a country who loves football so much like Afghanistan. Do you have any thoughts on this, Arya?
Absolutely not. I think you said everything. It's crazy to even hear these things. Really, I mean, captured by, well, not captured by, but did you say captured by Taliban? I didn't quite catch that.
He
But
was arrested by
or
Taliban, yeah,
arrested.
because
Yes,
of
sorry.
corruption.
Not exactly. It's like all of that is just insane. Like, what the hell? Are we talking about football here, or are we speaking politics? What is going on? But yeah, it is sad to see these things. Not just for Afghanistan. If it would have happened to any country around the world, it's never things that you want to hear. And we're gonna have to see where it goes from here.
Yeah. Okay, so Arya, would you like to move on to the international friendlies?
Of course, let's go. So there's been obviously a lot less international friendlies between Asian nations, obviously because of the World Cup qualifying round. So I'm gonna go through the results here. So Australia only losing 1-0 to England, and it was a very, I would say, I wouldn't say necessarily a good performance because they didn't really offer much, but still to only concede one to a team like England, especially where we got a team like Iran who conceded 6, but we don't need to talk about that. They then proceeded to beat New Zealand 2-0. So some solid friendlies for Australia. Do you think that they are ready for the Asian Cup, Erfan?
Uh, Before this window, I'd say no, they're looking a bit shaky. I would have said, oh, maybe their World Cup run was just a bit of luck and a fluke. But after seeing that performance against England, they've kind of they've changed my opinion. I think that they are possibly now one of the favorites to go deep into the tournament, maybe reach the semifinals or even the final if they can get past Japan. But yeah, they have looked better this window than previously, so maybe that's a good thing for them.
The next friendlies, I can choose from any country here. Let's go with Iran. Let's get that out of the way. So Iran were in this tournament alongside Jordan, Qatar, and Iraq, which was held in Jordan. And they also won, like I said, 3-1 against Jordan, and then they won the final 4-0 against Qatar. Against Jordan, if we're being completely honest, the scoreline doesn't really reflect what happened in the game. Iran were actually quite lucky to not have gotten anything worse out of that. There was a last-minute penalty, which I know Erfan doesn't like when I'm bringing this penalty up because he thinks that there's been a little bit of a dodgy call there, but nevertheless, the Jordan player missed it, and Iran scored a last-minute goal, courtesy of a Mehdad Mohammadi dagger. And then we went on to play against Qatar in the final, and listen, the game was boring all the way up until the 60th minute, 70th minute, I don't remember. Iran just started banging in goals. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hossein Kanani scored 2 goals and tried to celebrate in front of Carlos Queiroz's face, for a lot of reasons. him not being included in the World Cup squad back in 2022 and all these things. But I think that Qatar game was one of our best games in a long time. I know we didn't really offer much until the 70th minute, but I would kind of give this Iranian team a very similar look to an FC Porto, where like if we want to play, we end up playing well. That's like kind of the vibes I'm getting from this Iran team. But we really should be able to cruise past the group that we have in the Asian Cup, and I also do believe that we need to work on our finishing because, oh, God, our finishing is horrible. Erfan, I'm sure you have more to say about that.
Yeah, I agree on that. And on the point you made about the Qatar game, yeah, that was probably one of our best games in a long, long time, and I'd say the best game under Arya Nourizadeh. And it's not even just about until the 70th minute. Even before that, you were attacking a lot, but we just couldn't finish our chances, like you said. We had some finishing issues. But yeah, the way we were pressing against Qatar, we didn't let them breathe at all. You could say Amir Khalenoui read Carlos Queiroz and his tactics. So yeah, I'm happy that Khalenoui is succeeding for Iran. Hopefully this carries on into the Asian Cup and the World Cup qualifiers as well, and he can get good results. Yeah, some other results. And the other semi-final, Qatar and Iraq. This game ended 0-0. Iraq played much better. They had some really good chances, especially towards the end, but they missed, and then Qatar won on penalties. Jordan and Iraq drew 2-2 in the third place playoff, and Iraq won on pens against Jordan. So yeah, what about the other friendlies, Arya? Can you please continue?
We've got South Korea smashing Tunisia 4-0. Very surprising because South Korea have not been great at all. And a lot of people are going to hate me for this. Although they did smash Tunisia 4-0 and also beat Vietnam 6-0, I'm still not convinced with Jurgen Klinsmann. And Tunisia, I've heard, have not been the best recently. But I believe they played without Sun. And Kang-in Lee was perfect. I saw him doing wonders for Korea. So the 4-0 against Tunisia is, I think, quite obviously the best performance that has been made under Jurgen Klinsmann. And then the 6-0 against Vietnam, not really much, to add for that. Then we got Saudi Arabia, and they are continuing their struggles. They tied 2-2 against Nigeria, which is a respectable result, but then they lost 3-1 against Mali, which then causes a little bit of confusion there. So Saudi Arabia are just not looking up to par to what they were prior to the World Cup. And it's a little bit worrying. If I was from Saudi Arabia, I'd be a little bit worried with this national team. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, Erfan.
Yeah, I said the same thing in the last podcast. Roberto Mancini is I talked to one of my Saudi friends actually, and he said this: the money he's getting is haram. He should not be getting this much money, and they're not really happy with him. They want him gone. They think that his tournament win with his Euro win with Italy is the only thing he ever can add to his name, and he's not going to be successful after that. And yeah, most Saudi people I've talked with are not happy with him, and they want him gone.
Moving on to Malaysia beating India 4-2, and then losing to Tajikistan 2-0. I don't really have much to say. I haven't watched those games or even watched the highlights, so I cannot really comment on that. But from the
I'll just add something to that. This was part of a four-team cup called the Merdeka Cup, I think. It was held in Malaysia. The four teams participating were originally Malaysia, India, Tajikistan, and Palestine. But unfortunately, Palestine had to withdraw due to issues. We don't want to get too political. Malaysia played the semi-final against India and won 4-2. India just kind of lost it after the 30th or so minutes. And yeah, I don't know what happened with them. Maybe it's just India cannot play good away from home. They can only play good in India. So they should maybe improve on that. And then Tajikistan, who got the bye to the final, and who were actually missing most of the national team players because Istiklal didn't release them as they were preparing for their ACL games, but they still managed to win the competition away in Malaysia.
Next up, we've got Uzbekistan with some very decent results. 2-0 against Vietnam and 2-1 against China. I actually watched that game against China because I had nothing to do. And they were actually losing 1-0. Then Uzbekistan had to come from behind and score 2 goals. It was a pretty good game to watch. And, we keep saying this all the time. Uzbekistan are the dark horses for the AFC Asian Cup that's coming up in a few months. So it's cool to see them get on the score sheet. Next, we've got Kuwait beating 2-1 Syria, and then losing to the UAE 1-0. I'm going to let you talk on that, Erfan.
Yeah, I was actually in the game. I attended this game, UAE versus Kuwait, and the scoreline does not represent the game at all. Kuwait played very, very well. They had so many chances, and if they could just finish a bit better, they could have even won this game. UAE won this game off a spectacular goal towards the end of the first half. But yeah, I think Kuwait, they surprised me. Even though they didn't qualify for neither this Asian Cup or the last Asian Cup, but yeah, they played very, very well, and this gives me hope for their 2026 World Cup cycle. I think maybe they can be hopeful for advancing to the third round of World Cup qualifiers. And then the game UAE against Lebanon, UAE again, they didn't play up to their standards, even though both the games were at home. Lebanon played decent this game as well, but then UAE won in the last minutes. And another game I want to talk about, another Lebanon game, is Lebanon against Montenegro. Playing against Montenegro away, they're a fairly average European side. I'd say, not the best and not the worst either. And they had a very respectable 3-2 loss against Montenegro. So yeah, and they played well against UAE, like I mentioned earlier. So they can also be hopeful towards the Asian Cup.
Yep, I was about to cover that game, but you've just done it for me. So we're going to move on to the Bahrain games. They won 1-0 against the Philippines, which I wouldn't say is necessarily a amazing result. I think they can do better, with all the respect to the Philippines. And Bahrain beating Kyrgyzstan 2-0. I think that's a much better result for them. I think that's what they were looking for from the get-go. Not much to really add. Is there anything you want to talk about, Erfan, or not really?
No, it's just Bahrain being Bahrain.
And then next up, we've got Thailand getting absolutely pounded 8-0 against Georgia. And then coming back off a respectable draw against Estonia right afterwards. So I don't know. I'm a little bit conflicted with this Thailand team. I mean, losing 8-0 against Georgia is tough. I mean, Georgia do have a couple of ballers. They got that striker that plays in France. I can't pronounce his name. We obviously got Kvaradona, the man himself, plays for Napoli. But nevertheless,
I think we should add that Thailand did bring, like, it was a B team, yeah, sort of a B team, but still losing 8-0
is
is not
not
excuse. Yeah.
exactly. So that's it for the friendlies. I think we've covered everything in depth, which is cool. We're now gonna move on to the Asian Champions League match day, as well as the AFC Cup match day. So I'm gonna let F1 take over from here, because unfortunately I was very busy this week and did not have much opportunity to watch the Asian Champions League. I think the only game that I watched was the Persepolis game. So F1, I'll let you take over from here, my friend.
Okay, so in Group A, Al Ain played at home against Ahal. They won 4-2. Very, very good attack by Al Ain. They've been very good this year. They scored 3 goals in the first match day, 4 here, and then 4 in the third match day as well. So 4-2 win for them against Ahal. And then Al Fayha got their first ACL win in Riyadh, the 2-0 win against Pakhtakor. Al Ain won again 4-1 against Al Fayha in Al Ain. And Pakhtakor got their first win with a 3-0 against Ahal of Turkmenistan. So this is how the standings look like for Group A. Al Ain are first with 3 out of 3 wins, so 9 points. Pakhtakor, Al Fayhan, and Al Ahal all on 3 points. So I think this is going to be one of the groups where the second place teams just doesn't advance. In Group B, Sharjah won 1-0 against Al Faisali. I attended this game as media, so it was a very good experience for me. Al Faisali, their fans surprised me. They had even better fans. It was like they were playing at home, even though the game was in Sharjah. But a brilliant Musa Marego finish. His first goal for the club won that game for them 1-0 in Sharjah. Nasab Qarshi won 3-1 against Assad. Continues the downfall of Assad. But then in the next match day, they absolutely demolished Al Faisali of Jordan 6-0 in Doha. with the help of a Baghdad Bunaja hat-trick. Sharjah won 1-0 against Nasaf Qarshi. Kayu scored the only goal of that game. Nasaf Qarshi got a penalty late on in the game, and but it was saved by Adel Al Hosni. The penalty was missed by former Esteghlal player Azizbek Amanov. In Group C, Al Ittihad versus Sepahan. We know what happened there. The game got well, we don't know if it's cancelled or postponed yet. It's probably going to be known by the end of next week. But yeah, the game was supposed to be held in Isfahan, but Al Ittihad refused to go out on the pitch due to a political statue on the field. Al Qawal Jawiya, or Air Force of Iraq, beat AGMK 2-1 away. And then AGMK also, they lost 3-1 to Sepahan. Rezayan with two very, very good set-piece goals. And Asadi scored the other one for them. Al Ittihad won barely against Air Force Club 1-0 in Jeddah. Hamdallah scored in the 94th minute. It says he's the first player in history to score in the ACL for 5 different clubs. In Group D, Al Hilal beat Nasaji 3-0 in Tehran. A very respectable performance by Nasaji, I must add. You know, they're definitely not one of the best teams in Iran. So, and they had some good chances that game. So yeah, good for them. Navbahor beat Mumbai City 3-0. Same thing as match. They won Mumbai. Just they had the position, they had the ball, but they just couldn't finish. Or whenever they went into the final third, they couldn't just score. Navbahor came back against Nasaji to win 2-1 in Namangan, and Al Hilal demolished Mumbai City 6-0. Mitrovic with a brilliant performance, including his bicycle kick goal in the 80th minute to secure his hat-trick. And this game should not have been 6-0. Maybe 3 or 4-0 would have made more sense, but I think towards the last 30 minutes, Mumbai City just couldn't keep up with the pressure. Istiklal lost 3-1 to Al Nassr in Riyadh. Ronaldo scored his first ACL goal that game. And Talisca scored the other 2. Persepolis won 1-0 in Doha against Al Duhail. Al Nassr won 4-3 against Al Duhail in Riyadh. That was one of the best games I've seen in Asian football. It was so back and forth, and you just never knew what was going to happen. But yeah, Ronaldo played very, very good that game, getting 2 goals and a very nice assist. Persepolis won 2-0 in Tehran against Istiklal, with a really good performance from Said Sadeghi, who got a brace that game. In Group F, moving on to the East region, Jeonbuk Hyundai Motors lost 3-2 to Bangkok United. And this has shocked me. You know, Bangkok United have started the ACL with a perfect start, 9 points out of 9. And it's not really expected from a Thai team, especially when Jeonbuk is in your group. So props to them. Some really good performances by Roomgrath Pungjantek, who plays for the Thai national team as well. He scored 2 goals in his last 2. Kichi lost 2-1 to Lion City of Singapore. Jeonbuk won 3-0 against Lion City. Lion City still only have 3 points. And then Kichi lost 1-2 to Bangkok United. In Group G, Incheon United beat Kaya Philippines 4-0. Shandong lost 1-0 at home to Yokohama. Incheon lost 2-0 to Shandong, and Yokohama beat Kaya 3-0. In Group H, Melbourne City are finally on track after their draw against second division side Winterford Kofu. They beat both Zhejiang and Buriram United. And Winterford Kofu also got their first ACL win in Tokyo with a 1-0 win thanks to a 90th minute winner by Motoki Hasegawa and against the Buriram United. Zhejiang also beat Winterford Kofu a few weeks later in Huzhou. In Group I, Kawasaki Frontale beat Ulsan Hyundai 1-0 thanks to Itachi Banada, a winner in the 90th minute. And PG Batam United lost 4-2 to JDT at home. Ulsan Hyundai lost 3-1, won 3-1 against JDT. I'm sorry about that. And Kawasaki won 4-2 against BG Pathum. And finally, in Group J, Pohang Steelers beat Wuhan 3-1. Urawa Red Diamonds, defending champions, destroyed Hanoi of Vietnam 6-0 with 6 different goal scorers. But then they went on to lose at home to Pohang Steelers 2-0 in Saitama. And Wuhan also beat Hanoi just 2-1. So respectable performance there by Hanoi FC. And yeah, so my mouth is really dry. Would you like to take care of the AFC Cup performances, Arya?
That was a very good performance by you, bro. I'm proud of you. You said everything
Thank you.
correctly. All right, let's move on to the AFC Cup. And buckle up because it's gonna be a lot of name butchering here. So I believe the match day was played. So it was the 23rd of October, the 24th of October, and the 25th and 26th. So on the 23rd, the Al Ahad game against Jabal Al Mukaber was, I believe, was postponed due to some issues. Al Zara played against Al Nejmeh. Al Zara winning 4-1. Al Nahda beating Al Ftoa 2-1. Al Rifa beating Al Arabi 3-0. Pretty respectable result there. And then the next day, Odisha FC destroyed Mazia 6-1. And I kind of feel like sometimes there's some teams that kind of don't really belong to necessarily be in the AFC Cup because they've just been running away with their games. And I think Odisha FC.
That's why we're getting the reforms next year.
Yeah, and I feel like Odisha FC is an example of that. Al Ittihad, not the Saudi Arabian one. The other one beat, tied with Kuwait SC 1-1. Next up is Mohun Bagan, the Indian team playing against Bashundhara Kings. Let me get that straight. Game ended 2-2. Al Wahdat beating Al Kahraba 3-1. The day after that was Haiphong beating Sabah FC 3-2, and then Makassar beating Hugang United 3-1. And on the 26th of October, Central Coast Mariners beating Bali United FC 6-3. That must have been a cracking game to watch. And then Terengganu tying 2-2 with Stallion Laguna. Taichung Futuro beating Tainan City 2-1. Cebu FC of the Philippines beating Shan United 1-0. Chao Pek Kai losing 1-0 to FC Ulaanbaatar of Mongolia. Phnom Penh from Vietnam beating MacArthur FC 3-0. That's a very shocking one. I would say that's
Yeah,
the most shocking.
yeah, it's because the Australian League just refused to postpone MacArthur's game, so they had to send a kind of youth team. So
And
that's why they lost 3.
was a brace by Japanese player Shintaro Shimizu. No idea who he is, but yeah, he scored a brace in that game. And then Abdish Atta winning 1-0 against Ravshan Kulob, and then Altin Asir beating that. I struggled with this club's name last time. Merv.
Merv,
What
yeah.
is that? 2-1. So that's it for the AFC Cup. And I guess it's a good moment to now move on to the Women's Olympic qualifying tournament, which I think we should do quickly. Erfan?
Yeah, so this is the final group stage of the women's qualifying tournament for the Olympics. The 12 teams have been divided into 3 groups of 4. So I'll just go through them real quick. The first match days have been played. It will resume tomorrow. In Group A, it's the first match day. Chinese Taipei lost 4-1 to the Philippines. So Philippines, they qualified for the World Cup earlier this year, and they seem to be continuing their good performances here in the qualifiers. And Australia with only a 2-0 win against Iran, a very, very respectable game loss for Iran. Even though they had very, very few chances, only that game. But Iran, who've not been really known for women's football, to draw a game against the 4th best team in the world. They finished 4th in the World Cup, and against the likes of, let's say, Sam Kerr, I think it's very, very good for Iran. Gives me hope for the future. So yeah, in Group B, South Korea beats Thailand 10-1. An insane result. North Korea beat China 2-1. So North and South Korea, both of them are first and second. They will take each other tomorrow in Xiamen, China. So the Korean derby will be on tomorrow. And then in Group C, the last group, Japan beat India 7-0, and Uzbekistan beat Vietnam 1-0. So anything you'd like to say about that, Arya?
Not much. I think the surprising result would be Australia beating Iran 2-0. I was expecting Iran to get smashed like 5-0 or something. It's cool. It's definitely cool to see those things. But no surprises in the rest, I would say, for the most part. And we're going to be moving on to another section of women's football here, the CAFA Under-14s Girls Championship, which was a tournament that I didn't even know existed until I was scrolling on Instagram. And I told Erfan we should cover this at least because it's cool to talk about these sort of things. No one really talks about, this tournament. So we could be the first ones to do so. I think it's pretty cool. So the champions of it, surprisingly, was Iran. They won it. I told Erfan from the beginning, I don't think Iran's going to win it. They ended up winning it, which is very cool, very very cool indeed. The runners up were Kyrgyzstan, and then third place was Uzbekistan, and the most valuable player was Iran's Elina Shahbazi. And the top goal scorer was a player from Uzbekistan, Hamidova. Again, I don't know any of these players, and I don't think Erfan knows them either. So I don't want to go too in depth. I mean, I cannot really go in depth because there's not much known about this, but I think it's something cool that I think we should have added in this little section of the podcast here. Pretty cool. Maybe, some of these players are gonna end up being superstars in the future.
We never know.
Exactly. And the last thing we're going to be talking about very, very briefly are going to be the AFC I should say football rankings and the FIFA rankings, actually, for Asian nations. Not much has really changed apart from Japan moving up 1 or 2 spots. I'm not exactly sure. And Pakistan moving up 4 spots. I think those are, I guess, the 2 highlights of the FIFA rankings for Asian nations. Iran still at 21st, and I believe all the other ones.
Korea 24th.
Yeah, they haven't moved as well. So that's pretty much it for today's podcast. It's been very interesting. A lot of new things that we haven't ever spoken about in the past. Erfan, is there anything you would like to add before we finish this up?
Yeah. Thank you again, Arya, for being here with me today. I'm looking forward to the next podcast because that's when the World Cup qualifiers are really going to kick off in Asia. We have around 2 games, and then after that, the Asian Cup. So a lot to look forward to. And I think that's it for today, like you mentioned. So thank you guys again for listening. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on Spotify and Twitter if you have not already. And see you guys next time. Goodbye.
Peace.